All right. Well, welcome everybody to another episode of Marketing Hops, where we share pints and perspectives on B2B sales and marketing in the landscape that we are in. I'm super excited to have David here with us today. Um, let's dive in. What are you sipping on during our time today?
Well, I went out and I bought my favorite, a Peroni.
Ooh, good choice.
Right?
Why is that your favorite? I'm always curious to ask people.
Well, my teenage years, I grew up on the Mediterranean and used to get cheap kind of skunky beers as a teenager, right? And this is the closest thing. It's not quite as skunky as what I was used to growing up, but this reminds me of that time a little bit. And it's light, it's tasty, and it's not overly heavy with caramel type of flavors and
The malty
thick
type
stouty
thing.
kind of stuff. I like a good Guinness, but that's my go-to.
A
Peroni.
fun story. I got to go with a group to Dublin. And part of our experience, we got to do a lot of really cool things. Like we played piano and sang and had tea with the Lord Mayor, all kinds of fun stuff. But one of the highlights, we got to go to the Guinness factory. And I am a certified at the Guinness factory Guinness pourer. So there's a technique and an art to it.
That's excellent. So you didn't get further south to the Murphy's factory, I take it?
Did not. No, we did not. We did run over to the, what is it, Jameson's has a second, there's like the yellow dot and green dot fun story behind those and like how they label the barrels. That was right nearby. So we visited that one as well, but didn't get to Murphy's.
For next time.
What do I got today? I'm sipping on a local cidery from Schilling here. I felt more cidery today than beery. So,
Okay.
but with that, we'll crack them open and say a quick cheers. Excited to have you on.
Clink.
Cheers to you. Yeah, clink. So would love, you've had a really interesting career and a really interesting background. I'd love, can you share a little bit of your journey from kind of how you got to be a marketing executive and what that looked like?
It's okay. Sure. Happy to. So thank you. Well, how did it all start? My first real role in tech was doing a cross between market research, which is something I had done in a previous job, quantitative and qualitative market research, and outbound phone calls. This was many technologies ago. And I realized quickly that the motions of doing quantitative market research were very similar to the motions of demand generation. You have a list. You might ask them questions. You want them to respond. You tabulate results. That's, overly simplified market research process. And that's not so far different from the marketing that was present when I first started my career. So I worked in some database companies, a couple of database companies. I'm based in Boston. I've been doing B2B marketing. I guess I should kind of rise up a level. I'm getting into too many details. But I've been doing B2B tech marketing for about 30 years now. I've been a VP 3 times, a director of demand gen, or a senior director of demand gen 5 times. I've experienced 4 acquisitions and 1 IPO. In recent years, I've been a fractional kind of marketing executive, which covers a multitude of sins. And I'm the guy in the marketing team who historically has been the kind of connective tissue between marketing and sales, product and the customer, given that my background heavily is in the market, in demand generation, demand creation side of things. So I'm trying to put the right message in front of the right person at the right time. A lot of the technology I've marketed has been to IT professionals within enterprises and SMBs. So it's kind of a complex sale generally. It's a little esoteric. It's not the kind of thing you can go home and explain to your parents what this thing does, because we're not users, and it's a bit of, so there's been cybersecurity, database, networking, operational tech, a lot of different tech, right? And well, anyway, that's a bit about me. Separately, I used to think I was going to be a rock star, so here's my axe for now.
I got mine back over this corner here. Mine's acoustic though. So
I see. Yep. I played in many bands, and over the years, between bands and solo, I've released about 10 CDs. So,
oh, you got me beat. I just sing silly songs for my kids, so I
yeah,
don't
but I
play
can't do that.
publicly.
I couldn't sing a silly song to save my life, or any kind of song, I should say. I'm the guitar player. I just press buttons.
I think I sang and it became my accompaniment there, and being able to play for yourself was always good because then at least there's somebody who can back you up. But so I see you have your marketing hat on today.
I do
Here.
actually, yes.
As we go through that, as you were going through kind of moving up the ranks across your career, especially with kind of the breadth of experience that you've had, what were some of the biggest challenges once you kind of hit that VP, marketing leader level? What were some of the biggest challenges that you faced across your career?
Ooh, that's a good question. I mean, there could be many. One that,
Ones you feel okay talking
well,
about.
sure,
There might be
sure,
some that you
absolutely.
can't talk
Well,
about.
a perennial challenge is always trying to join an organization where you feel as if there's good, what we call today, product market fit, right? And it's always a bit difficult, especially if you're joining a startup. So therefore, an emerging brand in what they might tell you is an emerging category. So there's not a lot of, the ground is a bit shallow or weak. It's like, okay, how much fit do you have as a startup with your ideal customer profile? So that's always a bit of a challenge. And sometimes you can, as you get more experience, you learn a few things. But many times it's really hard to know until you're actually working there, right?
Mhm.
Unless you have prior experience in that specific industry niche already, because then you'll go in with eyes somewhat open. You went from vendor A to vendor B, but you're in the same general space. So that's the toughest one. And I've been kind of breaking out what is ideal customer, fit, product market fit, ideal customer alignment. These are different terms. I like ideal customer alignment a lot because it made me smarter once I started thinking about things that way, instead of saying product market fit. And I'll break it out just to kind of explain, and it'll make more sense. When I have heard the term product market fit, rightly or wrongly, I've kind of assumed that had a lot to do with the product, and therefore it becomes somewhat of an engineering problem.
Whoa.
Right? The product works. The product does its thing. The product is adequate to, what we expect in the market and so on. If the product isn't working, isn't providing customers satisfaction and doing what they need, I was thinking that's not good product market fit. My vision may have been limited. So I've recently been thinking about this quite a bit, and I've kind of come away with 5 dimensions of what go into real product market fit. And then I came away thinking, maybe product market fit isn't quite the right term. So let me introduce the 5 dimensions and then perhaps what the new term might be. All right. The first dimension is idea fit. Is it a good idea? Right? I mean, start out there. It sounds very basic. Okay, obviously. You can have a good idea, but it may not quite be articulatable or something. Time fit. Is it the right time? Is the market ready? I'll give you an example. I joined my first mobile application development platform company in 2000. That's 7 years before the iPhone. Great idea, a bit too early to market, right? Okay. Next is engineering fit. Does it work? Does it scale the way the customer might need? Does it perform the functions that we expect? So kind of it installs cleanly, it does the thing. Okay. The next is message fit. Message fit. Is the intended audience resonating with how you're messaging this? And the last one, which is rather critical, and many times where people fail and fall down, is value fit. Is it worth it? Is the cost of disruption to install, train, jigger your workflow to make it now adjust to this thing, right? worth the cost of buying it and the maintenance, keeping it, potentially training people on it? Are you going to get, after all those disruptions in costs, is it going to be returning some kind of economic benefit? So those are 5 different dimensions, I think, go into really good product market fit. And if you think in terms of those 5, you might say to yourself, well, we've got a good idea. We know the timing is good. We're working on the engineering. We're version 1.5 now, whatever. We don't think we've quite got the messaging quite right because of various reasons, right? It takes too long to explain who we are and what we do and how it benefits people. And we're not quite sure about the pricing. Maybe we do pricing this way, maybe we do it that way. We're still trying to sort things out. Now, when you get to a company that's kind of like, C round, many of those things have been figured out. Once you've got 50 million annual sales, ARR, you will have, for an average SaaS product, which is what, let's say 20 to 60K, maybe, you've had to have enough customers that you've built up a bit of a bank, and you probably will have sorted those things out. But in the A round and B round, you're still sorting it out. So what I like about this different way of breaking things out, and I realize we're taking the conversation at the beginning here in a different direction than we had planned. But what's interesting about breaking things out in these 5 dimensions of idea, timing, engineering, messaging, and value is you realize that product market fit is a complete company project, not just an engineering project, right? The value, who's involved in the value? Well, it's the price we might charge for our services. So that's going to be a combination of finance and sales, right? Essentially, trying to figure out what is the sustainable price that we can ask for this product. What do we need? What does it cost us to create and provide? Okay. On the message fit, well, that might be a bit of marketing and a bit of sales, because sales is speaking to the customer. They get that direct input. Marketing might have something to say about that, and product may have something to say about that too, right? Engineering fit. Okay, well, that could be customer service and the product team. Well, we think it works, but then when it comes to install, it has a problem or two, maybe, or we encounter a certain friction, or we might need certain integrations and so on. Maybe sales would have a voice there too. Timing fit. Well, that could be more along the founders. We might not have engineering and value if timing isn't good. But is the market primed and ready at a large enough scale to support the business venture that we are looking for? So, you might be a boutique shop creating one-offs, and that's perfect. But if you try and sell it to 1,000 people, there isn't the market for it, perhaps. As an example. So it's a full company project. And the reason I like to use a different term than product market fit is because product, again, leads me to believe it's about the product, it's about the engineering. So I like to speak about ideal customer alignment. Because the one thing that's also true, or 2 things also true about product market fit, the old definition, is it's not an absolute, it's on a scale. So you might better fit one customer than another customer, or one niche area than another niche area, right? So it's on a scale. And then the other thing is that it changes over time. The new entrant comes into the market space, and all of a sudden you say, they're providing X at this price. Our fit, if you will, on value, right, has to change, because otherwise our fit isn't as good as their fit. If you will, if you take the idea of competing on price and competing on value and return. What I like about ideal customer alignment is that, unlike product market fit, which does not seem to name the customer, it's focused on the product. Ideal customer alignment is actually focused on the customer and aligning to them. And your fit is always in proportion, if you will, or relative to who you're targeting. So that different term, ideal customer alignment, just puts my eye and my mind on the real challenge that I'm trying to accomplish, which is aligning to these customers, whoever they may be, right? And if I change my ideal customer definition, I will, by definition, then be changing the fit that my solution and my company and value has overall. So bringing that back to trying to find a good job, right? Okay, so you might want to ask certain questions that have to do with trying to determine if you think the company has a good idea. Is the timing good? The engineering solid? The message understood? And the value understood and I guess held true. So you may go to different resources and do research on 5 different elements now to try and figure out, well, okay, is this startup doing well? Of course, in the interviews, you might ask as well, how do you feel your fit is on these things? And how people react to those questions can be revealing, of course. People
definitely
are open and understanding where you're coming from and recognize where they have gaps and where they want to go. That tells you a lot about the environment. If people feel that you're being argumentative or difficult, or that they are feeling defensive in answering these questions, that tells you something perhaps about the environment as well. So that's standard for any question anyway. So that is a lot of answer to one question. I hope we're still on
it's a good different perspective on it. I mean, even bigger companies and like their Series C's and even publicly traded companies, you can kind of go back through these motions. I know an exercise I did one time was revisiting positioning for a company, and they're well established, right? Kind of 50 plus million in what they were doing, and going through the motion. You also, what was nice was you kind of really put the screws to what makes us unique. And I think a thing that comes across a lot when you hear people, we're creating a category and this and that, it's like, honestly, should you? Should you create a category, and do you really understand what's unique and special about your product? Because if you're just a me too, then yeah, you will compete on price, and that's important to know. But really diving into those types of things and understanding it through that motion, like, is the product, because I use this in a fit motion a lot and almost use this to back into the ideal, like customer profile is, hey, we've got these things that are truly unique about us, and these unique things deliver this specific value. And it may not be the whole value of the product, but it's the stuff that's going to stand out. But then there's a very small subset of people who probably actually care about those unique things. And backing into that can really also help you define kind of how do you focus? Where do you go? What do you do? And I like to overlay those into it as well, going through it is like, do we truly understand what's unique about us and who actually cares about that? Because if we don't, we can be spinning a lot of cycles and spending a lot of money on campaigns, on training, on all kinds of stuff that isn't going to yield the results that we want because we haven't locked in on that fit.
That's right.
As you go through that.
Absolutely. Now, one thing I might add to this, and perhaps it's on your mind as well, is that once you've determined what it is that is unique about our solution, our offering, our capability set, right, and we're articulating it, what's critical is we need to articulate this difference, this unique factor or factors in ways that talk about how the customer benefits from this uniqueness. So what is our distinguishing factor? What is our distinguishing differentiator? And then how is that something that the customer benefits from? Because if it's all just about us and how we're different, that's half the job. I mean, it's let's be honest, that's really difficult to sometimes articulate and get. But we will have failed on the communication from a customer's perspective unless we can turn that thing that we do into something that they benefit from, so that our difference, our unique, becomes something that they capitalize on, and we explain how they capitalize on it, how it helps them, why it's a benefit to them. Otherwise, it just sounds like another thing that's another bauble, another widget thing.
Yeah. No, I think that's kind of that next step is that messaging and nailing that message, right? And you had that accounted for in your 5, right? Are we messaging these things specifically as you go through that? So this is kind of modern way of thinking. a bit there, kind of changing it up. One thing I feel like in B2B marketing, we're kind of at this really interesting, I don't know if I want to call it a flashpoint, an inflection point, or what, but I feel like we're at a very disruptive time in B2B marketing, right? We've got AI, we've got new privacy regulations. The cookie is, basically going away soon. Like there's a lot of stuff being thrown at us right now. There's even a quote from the CEO of OpenAI. I think it was something crazy like 80% of marketing jobs may go
Higher. I
away.
think it
Or
was 95. Yes,
was it 95?
exactly.
Okay, yeah. So we're kind of at this really interesting moment in time. But as marketers, we've got to be constantly learning and thinking about it. And there's a phrase that gets thrown around a lot, which is modern marketing. And I'd love your thoughts on what does it take today to be a modern marketer? Or what are things that people should be thinking about to be a modern marketer to make sure that they're poised for kind of this disruptive time that we're in?
Okay, that's a great question. And of course, different people at different points in their career will think about different things that relate to them. I think as a modern marketer, in some ways, there are some things that are evergreen. We have to understand our customers, right? The more we understand about our customers' context and situation, how they got there, the history of how they got there, where they're heading in their worlds, then that knowledge hopefully can turn into insight in how best to communicate and even how best to develop, our solutions. So our, engineering compadres are trying to put together a roadmap, and oh shoot, okay, now the market has completely changed. We don't need this thing on the roadmap. We need that on the roadmap, right? For example. So everyone's trying to like figuring out, well, how do we do? We have data that we can do machine learning on. Well, what's our AI? Thing? Can we capitalize on the data that
Our
we're creating?
LLM, yeah, how that could.
Exactly, right. But for a marketer, a core principle is you've got to understand your customer as best as you can. Different roles in marketing may or may not have access to the customer to speak with them, to actually get that firsthand knowledge. So it's kind of incumbent on us to somehow seek out ways. A classic way people talk about is listening to gong calls or sales call recordings. Yes, okay, fine. Get transcripts of them. Nowadays, with various AI tools, we can take 15 transcripts and load them up into ChatGPT after suitable anonymizing of all of the details, so the innocent may be protected. Because we want to be mindful of that and our customers and our prospects, and then get a Gestalt analysis. What's coming through from these, and so we can learn. There are tools that will help us. You can talk to customer service. They'll tell you about the product and the customer, what's working, what customers like and what they don't like. The marketing team might think feature A is the go-to-market cool widgety thing to talk about, but the customer support team will say, actually, it's this little thing over here that we enable that they all love. It's like, that's what they
and also, what are the thorns to avoid too?
Exactly. Very, very well called. Yeah, absolutely. Right. Other ways we can learn from our customers. Maybe we're lucky enough to go to trade shows, or we can talk to sales reps directly. One place my secret sauce often when I'm joining a startup is to speak with the sales engineers, the pre-sales engineers. So I will, of course, talk to the sales reps because, of course, they want to talk to me, and I will say, yes, of course, right? Pre-sales engineers will go, because when I'm joining a company, it's often to do with helping market, get the company better known, generate more leads. And so therefore, sales all want to introduce themselves to me, and I'm very happy for that. I'm introducing myself to them if they're not proactively finding me. But sales engineers, why I like sales engineers is because they actually speak to the users of the solution, not necessarily the people who are signing the checks, though sometimes it's the same people. And the sales engineers tell me what's real. This is what works. This is what doesn't work. This is where things get stuck, and so forth. This is why people care. This is why people don't care. It's not that they don't have. They have a slightly different take on the truth from a different angle than sales reps, right? I'm not here to say sales reps are telling me something that's wrong. They're telling me something correct, of course. but it's a different perspective. So as I'm mostly selling or marketing IT type products to IT type buyers, and I'm not really going to be a customer of that product myself, it helps to get the sales engineer's perspective. It informs my marketing communication. So one of the things, we've gone into a bit more depth, but modern marketing, you have to understand your customer. You've got to figure it out in some capacity. Other things about modern marketing. Well, you need to, I think, understand who you are and where the customer is. So I like to think of the recognizing who I am, right? Am I an unknown brand with an unknown or emerging, two fingers here, right? So you can see an emerging category? Am I a known brand with a new or emerging category? Different marketing context. Am I an unknown brand into a crowded, well-known category? Am I a known brand into a known category? So there's 4 different contexts, and they each have different strengths and weaknesses. If you're working on the one end, unknown brand, unknown category, everything is education. You've got to educate everyone about everything. Who you are, what the category is, how it's helpful, how it works, how the value is measured. It's heavier. When you're a very well-known brand, communicating about all those new things can be easier because you're cross-selling and upselling to your existing customer base first and foremost, rather than it's a complete greenfield, everything's new, no one knows who you are. And so the challenge of communication is different. So I think it never gets talked about much because everyone assumes it's part of the woodwork, perhaps. But those 4 different contexts make a big difference to how we communicate. And just starting there is really important. Because it will shape your content. It will shape your go-to-market. It might even shape your pricing. It's all part of that fit that we're talking about, right? So
it kind of should shape your tactics and all those kinds of things too, right?
Very much.
I feel like what I heard was customers and getting in front of them as much as you can and listening. One thing I love to challenge people to do, especially marketers, is try to demo and pitch the product. Right, as you get in enough time, and do it in a safe spot, obviously. But like learning your product to a level that you could at least pitch it, right? You may not, if it's super technical or something, you probably won't be able to do a full-on demo like a sales engineer could. But like, if you can't really articulate the pitch, how are you supposed to market it? Right. And if you're not hearing the resonance of the questions being asked by prospects and customers and all those kinds of things, it's really hard. You could be using language that doesn't actually land at all. And you're going to fly blind on that. So 100% agree on that customer emotion. And then it sounds like context is really that other thing, is like understand the context of which your brand and product kind of falls into, and utilize that to shape your strategy as you're going into that. So you mentioned some of the modern tools like AI and GPT and all those kinds of fun stuff that not fundamental to being a modern. It's more a way of thinking.
Well, the tools will always change. I mean, there's a very good and long discussion to be had about what are the tools of this year compared to the tools of last year, right? Next 5 years, the last 5 years. That's always changing. But what's perennial is this. I had this explained to me by a very good development manager. He said, David, I've developed the same system for the same company 5 times in 5 different technology platforms, which was eye-opening because it's the same system. Now, obviously, the system version 5 probably does a few more things than system version 1. But it's essentially solving the same problem, but they've changed and they've migrated technologies to make it be able to work faster, more effectively, various benefits, of course. But he's rewritten the same thing over and over and over again in his mind at a high level, right? And the reason he gets to do that is because he understands the business so well that he knows what needs to be in the system because he knows what it all connects to. So when he architects version 6, he's not starting from scratch. He knows he's got a lot of knowledge about the customer, which is the other systems and what he's trying to accomplish.
Right.
So the challenge for us in marketing is kind of the same thing. As we go from company to company, we might be selling to same or different people, but the perennial thing is, what do they care about? How did they get into that knot that they're in now? What's changed since they made a decision? If, for example, you have had a career in databases and high performance databases, and you went from one company to another company to another company as the technology evolved in high performance databases, that institutional knowledge is really valuable because it helps you understand your customers and the journey that they have organizationally gone through as well. Now, different points when we're early in our career, we can't have that. So we can ask, however, and we can learn it. We can try and just proactively say, what's been the history in this category? How did it get to here? Because that can help you understand the people and the knots and how they got there. And that's, to me, that's quite interesting. I don't know, maybe I'm a bit of a geek, but I kind of like, how did we get here, right? I use the analogy of your grandparents' furniture. They've got a mix and match of all sorts of different things from all sorts of different time periods. And it all kind of fits in the various rooms that they've got, right? Because, they bought it over time and they moved and they sold some things and they bought some things. It all kind of fits. Okay. That is the IT department of your typical SMB or enterprise. They just have a whole bunch of stuff that kind of fits, that came across different time periods, depending on how long the company's been around. And they all kind of work together, and they're constantly trying to fix things that break or replace things that just need replacing. But it's not as if they started with a brand new clean slate and everything was clean and working perfectly, or at least it did at one point, but then time goes by. Understanding that kind of background I think is helpful. That's to me part of what I think a modern marketer needs to varying degrees. You mentioned digital marketing earlier. I've had sales engineers review my AdWords ads and keywords. I've scheduled the time specially. I said, hey, let's just take a look at this. All right. What should I be talking about? What's, from your perspective, as a kind of before I launch, is this going to gravitate? Is this answering a query intent need? Help inform me. Oh, that's a whole other word. I never thought about that word. Great. So they're closest things to being able to ask my customers directly, would this appeal to you?
What would you click on?
Right. So there are ways to infuse each of our individual little tactics with customer knowledge. All right. So a lot of detail on that topic, I'm sure.
No, I think that's, the customer in the context and getting that really any way that you can is super, super critical there.
Now, I can change hats.
All
right. And I can put on my marketing hat GPT.
Well, that might, okay, well, let's talk tech. We mentioned it briefly there. Everybody has different technologies they've become fans of across their time. Like, what are your top 3 must-haves in your stack? You can have more than 3, but like most of us have a few that are like our solid go-tos that we really like and believe. What are your top 3? And it can be sales, marketing, whatever.
Website, man. You got to have a great website. Do
you have a preferred platform right now? Because there's a lot of interesting tech on the platform side.
I don't. To me, what makes the website successful is that it answers the obvious questions that all prospects are going to have.
Yeah.
It helps them understand who we are, how we're different, how it would work in their environment, and whether they're going to see return. Right? So if we have, this has happened to me early in my career, I'm doing a really good marketing campaign. I can tell it's working well. I'm getting a lot of pickup on the messaging that I put into front of the market through my emails and direct mail, because remember, we used to do that, right? But then it kind of crashes when it hits the homepage, because the homepage is confusing and doesn't articulate as clearly and succinctly what I've been able to boil down. And I'm lucky because I've had the chance to kind of create something new for my particular campaign, and the friction to update a website might be much greater. So the website sometimes, and if you've worked at startups, this happens all the time, the website is an iteration or two behind what the sales reps are talking about. Because the sales reps have learned quickly, accumulated knowledge, but the updating of the website hasn't kept up with that insight. That's being charitable about it. So got to have a website that's helping answer buyers' typical buying questions. They want to know, what category are you in? Are you a good vendor, a reputable contender in that category? As a buyer, would I be successful implementing this stuff with my workflow, my people, and my tech? Because you've got workflow, you've got tech, and maybe it's great stuff and it works for someone else, but could be too big for me, could be too small. I don't want to fail on that. And am I going to get value? If my website can communicate information that helps answer those questions, that's good. So that's number one, good website. Number two, interesting. Well, you've got to have a good CRM/Salesforce type of system of record.
Mm-hmm.
Depending on who you're marketing to, you might have an account-based kind of motion. You've got named accounts, territories, or something that kind of limits the ideal customer profile, kind of puts into your go-to-market process your ideal customer profile. So you want your corporate memory to be longer than the life of your individual employees, I'm sorry to say. So companies,
and you don't want your CRM to be an Excel on a sales rep's desktop.
Yes, exactly. And it takes a team. And so nowadays, for even smaller sales, it takes more than just one contact. You're reaching out and communicating to 5, 15, 20 people, depends on the scale of the solution. And so consolidating all of that in one place so that the different parts of your sales motion, the pre-sales engineers, the customer service people, the account managers, who are all interacting, the VP of sales. So they're all interacting with customers. They all want to be able to see the context of who else is doing what and so forth, because it informs how they do their thing. So we need to have some kind of system of record that helps manage our opportunity process and our marketing process. So whether it's HubSpot and Salesforce, HubSpot or Salesforce, that type of thing, I think that's core. That's critical. Now, again, I'm guilty of thinking of things through the lens of marketing that creates revenue, because that's been so much my beat. But if I was a product manager, I might have a revenue number 2, depending on the kind of company I'm in. But I would want to make sure that my message is correct. So I would want to make sure that the message I'm asking the rest of the organization to adopt and deploy is the right message, because if it isn't, you know what happens? Sales reps will make up their own message.
Yep.
They'll do what is successful for them, which is not wrong. I'm not here to denigrate sales reps who decide to go off script. Because if they were given a script that was working, they'd go like, okay, that's great. Thank you.
Right.
You made my life easier. When they find that it's not working, then they go, okay, I'm going to start making up things. And all of a sudden PowerPoints are going to be, heroic acts by individuals, and everything gets crazy. So we want our product teams or product marketing management teams to have the tools to get that message right. And in smallest startups, many times that role is owned by the founder, who might be the CEO, because the whole premise of the business is based on an understanding that person brings to the market.
Right.
I understand my buyers because I used to be one of those buyers, and now I'm creating a tool that'll help these types of people and I understand what's needed because it would work for me because I was one of them, right? And I have to say, the companies that have been successful that I've been part of have been started by those types of people, which is interesting as another thing. If you're in a career trying to change jobs and you're looking, if the person who runs the show has been the customer of that thing, right, that you're offering, that helps tune the whole organization to serving the need of that person and that
Right.
kind of problem set. So it's an interesting kind of thing to. It's not necessary. It's not the only way, but it has been successful for me. So those are the three things. So the website, the CRM, and some kind of tool tech capabilities that allow the product team to get to make sure that they've tested their message, got it right, keep refining and tuning the message so that they can understand what is different about who we are, articulated well in a way that the customer says, that helps give me an advantage because I'm using their tool,
Right.
Not just it's faster or it's cheaper, which
Are good, but usually
which can
not
work
what
too,
you
but
win
it doesn't. It's not. It's compelling generally. So those are my
So,
three. I mean, what are your three? Turn it back to you.
oh gosh, mine are probably. I'll put labels on them. I'm trying to think if I could act like I use just a paid ChatGPT account almost daily, if not
Yeah.
multiple times a day at this point. There's a lot of nuance to it. Obviously, you don't just start with the blank slate and all the prompts and all that kind of stuff, but like I use it a lot.
Yeah.
And so that's probably a key one for me nowadays that I would need to have. Big fan of qualified chatbot kind of capability that's sitting out there. More so to your point on like you get into the website. I've also found a chatbot can make up for a multitude of sins on a website as well.
It's a balancing act.
Yeah, exactly. It's but sometimes depending on the size of your team, your ability to update and edit a website can vary greatly.
That's right.
Sometimes it's an act of Congress, and other times it's super easy. So I've found that chatbots are really great in terms of kind of giving you some more flexibility, but also letting you practically try to get in front of people. But you have to be mindful on how you construct it. But a lot of nuance I could go deep on that at some point.
Absolutely. No, given your background, I would expect so. One aspect of chatbots that I don't see used that I think ought to be is where you ask people, did you find what you were looking for? What were you looking for? How do we get feedback on our websites as being a successful experience
Beyond a
for the
bounce rate?
prospects to do what they're trying to do? They're trying
Right.
to make progress and succeed. Success is I found information that supported my need. So we're never asking unless we, or how do we ask, let's put it this way, for that feedback. And perhaps chatbots can be a way to say, on aggregate, yes, they're finding what they need, or no, they're not finding what they need. And this is what I would like to have found if I was looking for this, I didn't find it.
Right. I've never used it that way. I like that idea. And my third one would probably be Gong. Honestly, like that voice of market, extracting that out is so valuable. Are my sellers using the messaging? Is it resonating? What are the modern questions? Oh, they mentioned a competitor. How were we perceived in context of that? Like, there's just so much goodness in listening to those conversations and being able to scale it. I mean, like I've used it personally. Like I'll go sit at my son's soccer practice or something, and I'm sitting watching, and I'm listening to a call at 1.5 speed, and kind of glancing down here and there to look at it. But like it's ways in which you can consume it, and anyway, those are probably my three. A bit more tactical, direct text there, but
my next three, right? So that I would agree with you. I use ChatGPT almost daily as well. And I'm not using it to create content. I'm using it to find gaps in my content. I'm using it to help me clarify potential misunderstandings. I'm using it to role play. So I give it a framework. I share a context. And I say, okay, and I go through a kind of a dialogue that warms up the conversation. So let's say, for example, I want to evaluate how my website might be perceived by 4 different buying personas within my ideal customer profile type of accounts. So first I start at a higher level. and I eventually kind of warm up the topic, because what I'm doing is I'm putting certain answers into that query stream.
Right.
Because if you know ChatGPT, you know that the next answer is always going to be based on the context of that query stream.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to kind of tune it up. I call it warming up the topic a little bit, right? And if I find that I've gone down a rabbit trail that was kind of not yielding anything, I will start a new dialogue, new session, copying the good information, saying, I'm holding these things to be true.
Mm-hmm.
Now let's continue. So that I don't, by accident, build into my context 5 minutes of kind of questions that went off in the wrong direction, didn't really yield anything like that.
Potential tip to
then I
try
take the
out.
role
You can
and I
actually
say,
go up and hit the edit button on it and restart from where you started to go sideways a little bit on it.
You can do that. It depends on, sometimes you don't realize you've gone sideways until you've done a whole
True.
bunch of questions.
Yeah.
Is the problem. And it's like, oh,
True.
okay, well, that I thought that was good, but I did it, and it just kept on going off in the wrong direction. And then I say, okay, now that we've learned all these things about this persona, what they care about, the reasons they buy these types of technologies in this particular category, now I'm going to give you a whole bunch of web pages to take a look and say, are you finding the information you're looking for? Which information are you finding? Please quote it to make sure I agree. Right? If you're not finding the information, what information do you wish you could find that isn't there? And all of a sudden I'm finding information gaps. I want to go back and check. I don't take anything I get for face value. But for 5 different personas who might each have 5 different key concerns, that's the matrix of 25 different things I might be looking for on a website.
Right.
Ooh, that comes back, and I get my answers in the tabular format. Very powerful.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's so many applications of it.
There absolutely are. Absolutely.
So,
yeah. And by the way, one thing I would say about AI, a lot of people are concerned about, am I going to have a job? What should I learn? Is it going to, replace me? Am I keeping up with it? The fear of missing out. There's a lot of pressure on people in knowledge working kinds of roles. So marketing in particular gets hit this way. Potentially developers might feel the pinch because all of a sudden, things are kind of different there too. Here's 2 thoughts I would like to help us all remember. 1, 90% of startups fail. So we might assume that 90% of AI startups fail. Might not be, maybe 80%, maybe 60%, I don't know. But individual tech from individual companies may or may not survive. It's very early days. It's a tough market out there in many ways. So there's that. Number 2, any of the products you're probably already using today are thinking of how they can AI infuse their offering.
Right.
So it could be the tools that you already know, have already adopted, are gradually going to, through acquisition or development, add AI capabilities to their core purpose. So as we're sitting around wondering, do I need to learn this? Do I need to learn that? What about this? What about that? Maybe with those 2 thoughts in mind, we might relax a little bit. I don't know. I hope. I don't need to try everything because it's, 80% of it might not be there in 2 years.
Yeah. I mean, I think the thing I would add on to that is I'd recommend people tinker and just start to understand and see. Like, I know I've talked to some junior marketers and even some content people who are just totally, I'm not going to use it. And they didn't even want to explore it. And I think that will set you up for failure. Like, you need to be, you don't need to be an expert, but you should be tinkering. You should be doing some learning. It doesn't need to be your full-time hobby or anything like that, but at least be tinkering so that you at least have context. Because honestly, it can help you in not marketing. It can help you plan. I used it to plan a Disneyland trip. Right? Like you can use it in your general life, but just having context of what is likely going to be an incredibly disruptive technology for us is better than being the person who knows nothing about it. And so that's the part I always tell people is like, hey, like if you haven't, like just start tinkering with it and exploring. You don't have to do a lot. Because to your point, it's going to get embedded in, and it already is, in a lot of different tools. that, I mean, it's in Adobe, Canva's got it, it's in nearly all these recording and all kinds of different, and it's changing so fast. But if you're not tinkering with it in some way, shape, or form, start tinkering.
Make
That's
it
kind of my
play.
feedback.
As a
Right.
manager of a team, make it so it's okay to play. Give
Yeah.
people bandwidth, give them time, let them play and report back. Perhaps the
Yeah.
play can be directed towards particular goals or a particular. Let's use this project as an excuse to try stuff. And
Right.
it's okay if it doesn't work out. But let's use it as if as managers we say it's okay to try and to tinker. Some people,
Mhm.
as you say, and tinker is a great word because it's just like, but if we can bring in the idea of play, some
Mhm.
people don't like playing with tech. It's not their strength.
Right.
Ironically, there are a lot of great marketers who you probably wouldn't want installing, Windows 11 on your laptop, right?
No.
So, okay, because that's just not their thing. They like all sorts of other aspects of marketing. So some people will push back because they're fearful. Create teams. That's helpful.
Yeah.
Make it, instead of a lonely, all by myself type of thing for those folks, make it two-person teams if you've got the staff to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And that way it's kind of like, let's do this together and see what we can do. And you have show and tell a little bit. So I love the idea of tinkering. I love the idea of making it kind of a thing that you can play with. Yes.
Yeah, it's or like you're planning an offsite in 3 months, like have it recommend restaurant. Like you can give the team a goal or something to go mess around with. Like we're gonna try it and whatnot. So I know we're getting close to our coming up on our time here. I want to ask one last question because I always love to hear people's thoughts on this, which is if you could go back in time and give yourself one piece of advice, or a junior marketer today that has made a substantial impact or would make a substantial impact on your career, what would it be? You've kind of given some, I'm guessing. It might actually be your answer already, but uh, what would you tell your younger self, and what would be the advice you'd give?
Okay. So my younger self in today's context, because there's no point going
Yeah,
back to that
that
time.
matters.
It doesn't help anyone. So, okay. So today's, you need to, well, I'll come back to knowing more about the customer than you think you might have thought you could get away with. Early in our career, we become tactic jockeys, kind of. And this is my term thinking about myself. So I don't mean to be throwing anyone under the bus, but you know a tool, you know how to do a thing, and understanding the customer isn't as important as taking the messaging you're given and then somehow implementing it into your tool, your digital marketing dashboards and things and so forth, and sending it out into the world. And that can work, but it'll stunt you. You will get stuck. Until you learn how to know more about the business. The more you know about the overall business, the more you can kind of grow. The more people see you as valuable beyond your tool jockey capability. If you'd like to become a manager of a team, you have to show kind of your communication skills. You have to show your synthesis skills. You have to show your ability to interact with other people in other groups skills. There's a lot of stuff talked about sales and marketing alignment. If it's a problem at your organization, then that becomes your opportunity. Could you be the one that helps bridge the gap? So early in my career, I was more of a tool jockey. I thought I was going to be a rock star. So I just had a good job that paid pretty well. It paid for the recording time and tours and stuff like that and gear and all this. I wasn't trying to get ahead in my career. So I sat in one job, in one company for 5 years, another company for 6 years. And that time went by. Now, the pace of technology was very, very different earlier in my career, right? So now holding in one company for 4 years is the equivalent of staying someplace for 8. The pace is different. But if you'd like to grow in a marketing role, the more you understand about everybody else's work in a helpful way, not trying to get into people's, shorts, right? And understand how your department interacts with other departments. That will help you grow. So look for opportunities. Ask your management, hey, I'd like to learn more about this. Show initiative. Take some certifications. That's a positive sign. You're a manager. You're seeing people. David over here has just taken this, I know, Toastmasters. Does anyone do Toastmasters anymore? It's like, oh, interesting. Oh, okay. He's kind of like learning how to speak in front of groups of people. That's interesting. That shows a different kind of an initiative. Perhaps you also learn something. That's also a second benefit, right? So those are some things that I'd throw out. Kind of, it's a bit of a hodgepodge there, but with ideas for individuals to become a manager, if you will, to progress. On the flip side, if you're a manager and you've got a team, you need to give them opportunities to perhaps grow. Maybe a good way of doing that is asking them, what are a couple of bullets you'd like to add to your resume before the end of the year? Let's see if some of those align with our corporate and our departmental goals. Maybe we can give you some of that. That's a great thing, David. You want to do that? We need it done. Stepping up. I love it. Here, why don't I give you this project to work on with these other guys? Right. So as a manager, we need to kind of like seek out opportunities to kind of help our individual contributors and individual, early marketing career folk kind of like to get out of themselves a little bit, right? To experience and to experiment and to get some confidence under their wings. And I think the challenge that exists more now than it ever existed in my time when I was younger is working from home. It can be easier to settle. It can be easier to not be seen. Now people only see the results. They don't see the effort. And I think there's something lost. I know results are very important. I'm not here to say results are not important. Trust me. But I have a certain feeling about seeing, John or Mary or Joe sitting and they're still there when I leave. Or they come in early and seeing the effort. So as long as they're pulling their weight and stuff, seeing effort actually matters. At least it did. I think it still does. And somehow working from home, we've got to somehow figure out a way to kind of compensate for that, because some of us are working from home and some of us are working in the office. And then that creates a disparity that can, how does that work out? I'm not here to have answers, but we can guess, right? Out of sight is out of mind sometimes. I've never actually met two of my employees, for example, because they're wherever they are. They're good at what they do, but I never see them. Never met.
Right.
I don't even know if they have legs.
It's I think back to the days like when I was at Microsoft and stuff, and it was, if you were in the conference room, like everybody who was on the phone was at a disadvantage. You couldn't see the whiteboard. You would end up talking over people because of an audio delay. And I mean, I think we got a lot better at the Zoom meeting component as you're going through that, but as some companies are shifting back, et cetera, that's definitely a thing to keep in mind as you're going through that, because I think we're going to see a return of that.
If people can't see your effort, then you have to show them your initiative.
Right.
You have to ask. And if they say no, if your manager says no, then obviously that's going to have a bit of a sting, but take a breath. Okay. Ask. Say, all right, I accept that. Tell me, what might be missing or why. Is there a gap that I need to kind of travel before I can be ready to do those things in your eyes? So I'd like to be part of this meeting. And they say, well, we've got to kind of limit the number of people, to this many and that many people. And say, okay, I understand. So showing initiative, asking. If you get told no, then saying, okay, understood. What could I do so that next time it would be yes, right? And that's real world grown up. It's not having a fit.
Right. It's also recognizing the dynamics of business, that is a very true statement of, like, if you're just going to sit off camera on mute and not say anything in a whole phone call, it feels like a complete waste of your time to everybody else in that meeting. It's like, what did you bring to this? Exactly. And I've known a lot of junior people who just say they want to listen. And I understand that wanting to listen, but the perception that then gets picked up by everybody else is that you're doing this instead of work you should be doing, and you're not contributing at all. So that'd be my other
That's
thing is
true.
if you do get included, at least make sure you're saying something or you're on camera and you're looking engaged and that kind of stuff too. Because I've seen it the other way where you give them the shot and then they're silent off camera, and it's like, why? Basically, nobody knows that they were even there, or they're like, why are you here? So
That's it. That's it. So showing some ambition matters. Of course, when we're young, there's so many things going on in our lives. We're looking for relationships. Maybe we're in one. There are kids. There are many, many, many pulls. So you've got to find your own balance, your own, work-life balance. We talk about that all the time. Get outside, because you used to all have an excuse to go outside. It was called commuting. Now you can
there's
go
at least walking to and from your car.
pretty much, right? you know, um, and that might be more exercise than some people get when they just go from one room to the next room nowadays for a couple of days. So especially during winter when the weather's kind of awful out there, depending on where you are in the world. So I think as a work from home, younger people showing initiative, picking your battles, and not feeling bad if now isn't the right time for you to show initiative, because you've got a lot of other things potentially going on that folks in their 40s and 50s don't, because they've already gone through some things. So it's, but then, the thing that you have as an advantage when you're younger is you've got more energy. You've got more flexibility.
Yeah,
you've got more
very
capabilities to think outside the box. So those are your strengths, and to bring them, to the playing field. Okay, so I hope that's helpful. And if anyone,
I think that's good. I think people should take that to heart, both managers and individuals. But excuse me. Well, I know we're coming up on time.
yes,
Here, I want to say one more cheers. Thank you so much for being on today. This is fun.
cheers.
I know next time we might have to circle back and get into. We were going to talk some on the on how to get promoted. We went deep on a product market fit there, which was a lot of fun because I think it's a different way of thinking about it. But thanks for being on, and have a great rest of your day. And we might have to have you on again in the future.
I would look forward to it. Thank you very much. I wish everyone listening a pleasant day. And if you haven't already tried it, try a Peroni.
I love it. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Jeff.
See you on the next one.
Bye-bye.